The beeping of the ECG monitor was the only sound in the trauma bay, steady and rhythmic. My mother Petra clutched her chest dramatically, gasping for air like she couldn't breathe, her face twisted in what looked like pure agony. "Tell Leora I love her," she wheezed to the paramedics who were wheeling her in. "Tell my daughter I'm sorry." I was the attending physician on duty that night. I had been completely no contact with my family for exactly 3 years. 3 years of peace, of healing, of building a life without their constant drama and manipulation. When I heard her name called over the intercom as an incoming cardiac emergency, my heart dropped into my stomach. I rushed over to the trauma bay, adrenaline spiking through my system, terrified that my boundaries had somehow killed her. Maybe I should have answered her calls. Maybe this was my fault. But as I leaned in close to check her vitals, her eyes suddenly snapped open. She didn't look like someone in pain. She looked triumphant, victorious, like she'd just won a game. She whispered quietly, just loud enough for me to hear, "I knew that would get you to answer the phone." My name is Leora, and in that exact moment, my grief and fear turned into something cold and hard. I stared at the monitor above her bed, reading the numbers that told the real story. Normal sinus rhythm, perfect and steady. Oxygen saturation at 98%. Blood pressure completely normal. The troponin levels, which measure heart damage, came back negative. She wasn't having a heart attack at all. She was putting on a performance, and apparently a convincing one since the paramedics had rushed her in with lights and sirens. My father Eamon suddenly rushed through the trauma bay doors, wailing loudly. "She's dying! My wife is dying! You have to fix her!" His voice was panicked and desperate, but I saw him check his watch quickly when he thought nobody was looking. They were coordinating this whole thing like a planned operation. The relief I'd felt knowing she wasn't actually dying washed away immediately. It was replaced by a nausea so violent I almost threw up right there. They had used an ambulance as a taxi service. They had wasted emergency resources. They had lied to paramedics and dispatchers. All of this just to breach my carefully constructed peace and force me to see them. I felt my hands shaking as I gripped her chart. I tried to transfer her care to another doctor immediately. Dr. Lowell, the chief of medicine, was available. But Petra refused loudly, her voice suddenly strong despite her supposed heart attack. "No, I want my daughter. She's the best doctor here." She started screaming in the middle of the ER, causing a massive scene that had every patient and staff member starring. She claimed I was abandoning her on her deathbed, that I was letting her die because of some family argument. Other doctors were watching. Nurses were whispering. It was a calculated move designed perfectly to threaten my medical license and professional reputation if I walked away. I was completely trapped. If I left her care, I looked negligent and cold-hearted, a doctor who would let her own mother die. If I stayed and treated her, I was their pawn, playing right into whatever game they were running. The Hippocratic Oath didn't cover what to do when your patient was your abuser. I had to make a choice fast. "Fine," I said through gritted teeth. "I'll oversee your care." Petra smiled and closed her eyes, playing the weak patient again. I ordered a full cardiac workup to buy myself some time to think. Blood tests, EKG, chest x-ray, everything. While Petra was supposedly resting in the examination room, I went to the nurse's station to review other patient charts and clear my head. That's when I overheard my father Eamon on his phone in the hallway. He wasn't being quiet enough. "Yeah, we're in," he said in a low voice. "She's treating her right now. We should be able to get the signature by tonight if everything goes according to plan." Signature. My mind raced. They didn't just want contact or reconciliation or to see me. They wanted something specific, something that required my signature. I realized with a sinking feeling that this wasn't about a reunion or fixing our broken relationship. This was about money or property or something legal. This wasn't a medical emergency. It was a heist, and I was the target. I needed to find out what they wanted before they could manipulate me into signing anything. I walked back toward Petra's room slowly, my mind working through possibilities. I pushed open the door to her examination room without knocking. Petra was sitting up in bed, eating a candy bar she must have hidden in her purse. When she saw me, she shoved it under the blanket quickly and started gasping again, clutching at her chest. "My chest! Oh God, it feels like an elephant is sitting on me." Her acting was terrible now that I knew the truth. I looked at her chart again, reading through all the test results that had come back. Everything was completely clean. Perfect heart function. No blockages, no damage, no problems at all. Mom, I said calmly, keeping my voice professional and detached. Your heart is perfectly fine, all your tests are normal. But these symptoms you're describing, the panic, the hallucinations of pain, the manipulative behavior, this suggests something else entirely. A severe psychiatric break. Her eyes went wide with shock. What are you talking about? I'm having a heart attack. The tests say otherwise, I replied, writing notes in her chart. I'm concerned about your mental state. I turned to the nurse standing by the door. Please place this patient on a 5150 involuntary psychiatric hold immediately. She is exhibiting delusions of imminent death and is a danger to herself due to what appears to be Munchausen-like behavior. Petra sat straight up in bed, suddenly completely cured of all her symptoms. I'm not crazy, I was faking the heart attack. The words came out before she could stop them. Ah, I said with a small smile, still writing in her chart. So you're admitting to fraud and wasting emergency resources, or are you confused about what's real and what's not? Because confusion is another major symptom of psychiatric distress. I signed the commitment papers with a flourish. She wasn't leaving this hospital until a psychiatrist cleared her. You can't do this to me, Petra shrieked, trying to get out of the bed. I'm your mother, and I'm your doctor, I said calmly. And my medical opinion is that you need psychiatric evaluation before you hurt yourself or someone else. Security was already at the door, ready to escort her to the behavioral health wing. 2 security guards escorted Petra out of the trauma bay and toward the locked psychiatric ward on the 4th floor. She was screaming the entire way, causing a scene that echoed through the hallways. Eamon tried to physically stop them, grabbing one guard's arm. You can't do this to her. We just need Leora to sign the release for the trust fund. That's all we need. There it was, the truth I'd been waiting for. The signature they needed. Some kind of trust fund, probably from my grandmother. I'm sorry, Dad, I said, not sorry at all. But I can't discuss legal documents with a patient who is currently undergoing psychiatric evaluation. That would be unethical. And I'm afraid visiting hours in the behavioral health unit are over for tonight. Eamon's face turned red with rage. You're doing this on purpose. You know she's not crazy. Then the psychiatrist will clear her in 72 hours, I said with a shrug. If there's nothing wrong, she'll be released. Simple. He stormed out, slamming doors behind him. I went back to treating my other patients, feeling lighter than I had in years. An hour later, my sister Winslow stormed into the ER waiting room like a hurricane. She wasn't asking about our mother's health or condition. She was absolutely furious about the delay in their plans. You witch, she screamed at me in front of everyone. You put Mom in the psychiatric ward? Are you insane? We have a deadline. I pulled her into a private consultation room to avoid more scenes. What deadline? I asked, though I already suspected. Winslow was shaking with rage. We're selling Grandma Eulily's lake house, but your name is still on the deed from when you were 18. We need you to sign off on your rights so we can close the sale and get the money. The buyers are waiting. So that was it. My grandmother's beautiful lake house, the one where I'd spent every summer as a child. The one she'd put my name on because she loved me. When's the deadline? I asked. Tomorrow at noon, Winslow shouted. And now Mom's locked up and you're playing games. Do you have any idea what you're doing to us? The next morning, I visited the psychiatric ward before my shift started. Dr. Isola, the staff psychiatrist, met me at the nurse's station. She looked exhausted and frustrated. Your mother is difficult, she said carefully, which in doctor speak meant absolutely impossible. She keeps switching her story. First, she insists the heart attack was just a prank to get your attention. Then she switches to saying she really is dying and we're all ignoring her symptoms. I nodded, understanding the trap Petra had created for herself. To prove she wasn't mentally ill, she had to admit to the crime of faking a medical emergency and wasting resources. But to avoid criminal charges for that, she had to pretend she really believed she was sick, which made her look mentally unstable. She was stuck in a logic loop of her own making. How long can you hold her? I asked. 72 hours legally, Dr. Isola said, unless I have reason to extend it further. Is there something I should know? I thought about the trust fund, the manipulation, the years of abuse. Let me get back to you on that, I said. Later that day, Winslow tried to bribe a nurse to let her into the psychiatric ward outside of visiting hours. She wanted to coordinate their stories with Petra. Unfortunately for her, the nurse she approached was Claribel, who happened to be one of my closest friends. Claribel recorded the entire interaction on her phone. I'll give you $500 cash right now, Winslow said desperately. "I just need 5 minutes with my mother." "Why the rush?" Clarabelle asked innocently. "Because we already spent the deposit money from the house sale," Winslow admitted. "If we don't close this deal and get the full payment, the loan sharks are coming after my father. We owe them almost $100,000. Clarabelle brought me the recording immediately. This wasn't just about greed anymore. My family was in serious debt to dangerous people. "Who do they owe money to?" I asked. "She mentioned someone named Caius," Clarabelle said. My blood ran cold. Caius was a known loan shark in the city, the kind of person who broke bones when payments were late. I found my father Eamon sitting alone in the hospital cafeteria, drinking coffee with shaking hands. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. I sat down across from him without asking. "Just let her out, Leora," he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "Please, we owe very bad people a lot of money. They're not patient people." "Who exactly do you owe?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Caius," he whispered, looking around nervously like the man might appear. "He gave us a loan 6 months ago. We thought we could flip the lake house quickly, pay him back with interest, and keep the profit, but the sale fell through. Then another buyer backed out. Now we're out of time." I leaned forward. "I'll let Mom out of the psychiatric ward," I said slowly. "But first, you need to tell me the complete truth about something. How did Grandma Eulalie really die?" Eamon's face went absolutely pale. His coffee cup started shaking in his hands. "What are you talking about?" He stammered. "She had a stroke." "Did she?" I asked, holding his gaze. My grandmother Eulalie had died 5 years ago of what was officially reported as a sudden stroke. She was 72 years old and had been in relatively good health. I was in medical school at the time and couldn't get home before she passed. I'd always felt guilty about that. But now, looking at my father's terrified face, I realized there was more to the story. "Tell me the truth, Dad," I said firmly. "Or Mom stays in that ward for the full 72 hours and you don't get your signature." Eamon broke down. "We needed the inheritance," he whispered, tears running down his face. "She was going to live another 20 years, maybe more. We were drowning in debt even then, so we started making mistakes with her medication, skipping doses, giving her the wrong pills. She got weaker and more confused. Then one day, she just didn't wake up. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My family hadn't just neglected her. They'd deliberately harmed her to speed up the inheritance. They'd killed her, and I was a doctor. I had a legal and ethical duty to report elder abuse and suspicious deaths. "Get out," I said quietly. "Get out before I have you arrested right here." I went straight back to Dr. Isola's office, my mind racing. I knocked on her door and entered without waiting for permission. "I need to extend my mother's psychiatric hold to the full 72 hours, I said, "and I need to file a report with hospital administration and the police." Dr. Isola looked up, concerned. "What's happened?" I told her everything. The confession about my grandmother's death, the elder abuse, the deliberate withholding of medication, the suspicious circumstances. "My mother isn't just a danger to herself," I said. "Based on this history, she's potentially a danger to others, especially vulnerable elderly people." Dr. Isola's expression hardened. "I'll extend the hold immediately, and I'll contact our legal team." Within an hour, the hospital's legal department was involved. Petra wasn't just in psychiatric timeout anymore. She was under investigation for potential murder. The police were called. Detectives arrived to take statements. What had started as me protecting myself from manipulation had uncovered something much darker. My family weren't just scammers and manipulators. They were killers. That night, my home alarm system went off at 2 in the morning. The loud beeping jerked me awake. My husband, Rowan, who had married a year ago and who'd never met my toxic family, grabbed the baseball bat we kept by the bed. "Stay here," he whispered, but I followed him down the stairs anyway. We found Winslow and her husband Bennett in my home office, frantically tearing through my filing cabinet and desk drawers. Papers were scattered everywhere. "What the hell are you doing?" Rowan shouted. Winslow spun around, her face wild. "Where is it? Where's the deed to the lake house? I know you have it somewhere." "You broke into our house," I said, genuinely shocked they'd gone this far. "It's not breaking in," Winslow screamed. "That house should be ours. You stole it. Grandma should have left it to all of us, not just you." What she didn't know was that I kept all important documents in a safety deposit box at the bank. There was nothing here for her to find. Rowan held them at gunpoint. He kept a licensed handgun in the bedroom safe until the police arrived. It took about 8 minutes, but it felt like hours. Winslow kept screaming the entire time. "It's our house. She stole it from the family. We have rights." When the police finally came through the door, they found Winslow and Bennett surrounded by torn-apart files and broken picture frames. The evidence of break-in was overwhelming. "Officers, these two broke into our home," Rowan said calmly, still holding the gun pointed at the floor. "We have them on our security camera footage." The police arrested them both. Winslow screamed as they handcuffed her. "Leora, please, we need that money. They're going to kill Dad if we don't pay." But I just watched silently as they dragged her out to the police car. Now my sister was in jail, and my mother was in the psychiatric ward. My father was the only one still free, and he was terrified of what would happen when Caius came collecting. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered my grandmother's face, and the feeling disappeared. The next day, Petra somehow managed to charm a rookie nurse into letting her use a phone. The young nurse didn't know better and felt sorry for the sweet old lady who just wanted to call her family. Instead, Petra called the hospital board directly. She filed a formal complaint claiming I was abusing my power as a doctor to keep her imprisoned for personal reasons. "My daughter has a vendetta against me," she told them. "She's using her position to punish me. This is medical malpractice." Dr. Lowell, my boss and the chief of medicine, called me into his office that afternoon. His face was serious and concerned. "Leora, this situation looks really bad," he said carefully. "A daughter using her medical authority to lock up her own mother in the psychiatric ward. Even if you have good reasons, the optics are terrible. You need to recuse yourself from her care immediately." I tried to explain. I told him about the faked heart attack, the manipulation, everything. But he held up his hand. "I believe you," he said, "but I have to suspend you pending a full investigation. I'm sorry." I left his office feeling numb. They were winning. Even from a locked psychiatric ward, Petra could manipulate the narrative and destroy me. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for an hour, just shaking. My medical badge was gone. My reputation was being questioned. Everything I'd worked for was falling apart. They were winning, and there was nothing I could do about it. Or was there? I needed undeniable proof of what they'd done. Not just my father's word, which he would definitely take back. I needed evidence that couldn't be disputed or explained away. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name. Kellen. He was a tech specialist I'd treated in the ER 6 months ago after a motorcycle accident. He'd told me if I ever needed anything computer-related, he owed me a favor. I called him. "Kellen, it's Dr. Leora from the hospital. Remember when you said you owed me? I need to collect. Can you recover deleted files from a cell phone? Depends on the phone and how long ago things were deleted," he said. "But yeah, probably. What are we looking for?" "Evidence of murder," I said. There was a pause. "I'm in," he said. I called my father and lied smoothly. "Dad, I'll sign over my rights to the lake house," I told him. "I don't want to fight anymore. I'm tired, but I need to call the notary on your phone to set up the appointment. My phone died." It was a thin excuse, but Eamon was desperate enough to believe anything. He met me at a coffee shop and handed over his phone without hesitation. "Thank you, Leora," he said, relief flooding his face. "You're making the right choice. Family should stick together." I plugged Kellen's USB drive into the phone while pretending to make a call. Within seconds, the program was running, copying everything. Deleted texts, old emails, hidden files, everything. I handed the phone back and left, telling him I'd send the notary information later. That night, Kellen called me back. "Holy shit, Doc," he breathed. "I found years of text messages between your mom and sister. You need to see these." The texts were horrifying. "Give Mom half the dose today. We need her gone by Christmas. Did you skip her blood pressure medication again? She's getting suspicious. We need to be more careful." It was all there, proof of premeditated murder. The hospital board was meeting the next morning to discuss my termination. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I burst through the doors anyway. Dr. Lowell was mid-sentence, explaining why my actions were inappropriate. "And therefore, I recommend we terminate Dr. Leora's employment effective immediately." "No," I interrupted, walking straight to the projector at the front of the room. Everyone stared at me. "You don't have authorization to be here," one board member said. I didn't respond. I just plugged my laptop into the projector and pulled up the audio file of my father's confession, the one I'd recorded on my phone at the cafeteria. His voice filled the room. "We needed the inheritance. We started making mistakes with her medication. She got weaker. Then one day, she just didn't wake up. Then I displayed the recovered text messages on the screen, message after message showing premeditation and planning. The room went completely silent. Dr. Lowell stared at the screen, his face pale. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. "My father's phone, all legally obtained," I said. "My mother isn't mentally ill, she's a murderer, and I was trying to stop her from escaping justice." Dr. Lowell looked at me for a long moment. "Reinstated, immediately, and someone call the police." The hospital didn't discharge Petra when her 72-hour hold was up. Instead, they called the detectives who were already investigating my grandmother's death. The officers were waiting in the hospital lobby when Petra walked out of the psychiatric ward, finally cleared by Dr. Isola. She thought she was being released. She spotted me standing near the entrance and smiled triumphantly. "See, Leora, you can't keep me locked up. I'm perfectly sane, and now you look like a fool." "I'm not keeping you anywhere, Mom," I said calmly. "But they are." I pointed to the two detectives approaching her. "Petra Williams," the lead detective said, pulling out handcuffs. "You're under arrest for the murder of Eulalie Williams. You have the right to remain silent." The smile slid off Petra's face. "What? This is ridiculous. I'm innocent." "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law," the detective continued. The handcuffs clicked closed around her wrists. Petra looked at me with pure hatred as they led her away. "You did this. This is your fault." "No, Mom," I said quietly. "This is your consequence." The trial for my grandmother Eulalie's murder began 3 months later. I attended every single day, sitting in the back row. Petra's lawyer tried every trick in the book, but her best defense was absolutely brilliant in its twisted logic. She pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. And her evidence, the psychiatric hold I had placed on her. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," her lawyer said smoothly, "my client's own daughter, a licensed physician, declared her mentally unstable. She was placed on an involuntary psychiatric hold. Clearly, Petra Williams was not in her right mind during the time period in question. She cannot be held responsible for actions committed while mentally ill." It was genius. She was weaponizing my own medical judgment against me, using it as a shield against murder charges. The prosecutor looked worried. If the jury believed she was actually insane, she could end up in a psychiatric facility instead of prison, and potentially be released if doctors ever cleared her. I couldn't let that happen. I needed to testify. When I was called to the stand as an expert witness, Petra's defense lawyer went after me aggressively. His name was Thorne, and he had a reputation for being ruthless. "Dr. Leora," he said with a fake smile, "you placed your mother on a psychiatric hold, correct?" "I did," I answered calmly. "And you diagnosed her with psychosis and delusions, correct?" "That was my initial assessment based on her presentation, yes." "So you're telling this jury that your mother is mentally ill?" Thorne pressed. "Not exactly," I said. "You see, psychosis and delusions are conditions that affect someone's ability to understand reality in the moment. They don't allow someone to send detailed text messages planning medication schedules 5 years in advance. That requires long-term planning, calculation, and full understanding of cause and effect. That requires sanity." I pulled out printed copies of the text messages. These texts show clear premeditation over months. No one having a psychotic break could maintain this level of organized planning. The psychiatric symptoms she displayed in the ER were fake, just like the heart attack was fake, just like her entire defense is fake. The courtroom went quiet. I dismantled her insanity defense piece by piece. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood up and read the verdict. "On the count of involuntary manslaughter of Eulalie Williams, we find the defendant Petra Williams guilty." Petra's face went white. "On the count of elder abuse, we find the defendant guilty." Winslow, who was being tried alongside her mother, stood completely still as her verdict was read. "On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant Winslow Williams guilty." Eamon had turned state's witness, testifying against both of them in exchange for a reduced sentence of probation and community service. He sat in the back of the courtroom crying. As the bailiff prepared to take Petra away, she turned to stare at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "I gave you life," she screamed across the courtroom. "I'm your mother. I brought you into this world." I stood up and met her gaze directly. "And you took Grandma out of it," I replied quietly. The bailiff led her away in handcuffs. She was sentenced to 15 years. Winslow got 10. The lake house was not sold. The state seized it initially to cover legal fees and court costs, but I bought it back at auction 6 months later, using my savings. I drove up to it on a cold Saturday morning in November. The key still worked in the lock, and the door opened with the same familiar creak. I walked through the empty rooms slowly, remembering summers here as a child. The kitchen where Grandma used to bake blueberry pies using berries we picked ourselves. The living room where we'd play board games during thunderstorms. The porch where she taught me to read when I was 5. It finally felt peaceful. No debt hanging over it. No toxic family trying to take it. No more secrets. I sat on the porch steps and cried for the first time since this whole nightmare began. I cried for my grandmother, who died scared and alone. I cried for the family I'd wanted but never had. And I cried in relief that it was finally over. Rowan found me there an hour later. He sat down next to me and wrapped his arm around my shoulders. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said and meant it. "I think I finally am." 6 months after the trial, I decided to visit Petra in prison one last time. I'm not sure why. Closure, maybe. Or perhaps I needed to see with my own eyes that she was really locked away and couldn't hurt anyone else. I found her in the prison infirmary, complaining loudly to an exhausted-looking nurse about chest pains. "I'm telling you, something is wrong with my heart," Petra insisted. "Nobody listens to me here. I need a real doctor." The nurse saw me standing at the door. "Dr. Williams, do you know this patient?" "She's faking," I said clearly, not even bothering to examine her. "She's done this before. Ignore her complaints unless you see actual clinical symptoms." Petra grabbed the bars separating the infirmary from the hallway. "Leora, I'm really sick this time. You have to help me. I'm your mother." I stopped and looked at her for what I knew would be the last time. "No, Mom," I said calmly. "You're not sick. You're just alone. And that's exactly what you deserve." I walked out of the prison and into the bright afternoon sunlight. My phone rang as I reached my car. Unknown number. For a brief second, my old instinct was to answer, to always be available. Then I remembered everything and let it go to voicemail. Patient discharged.